Hi guys, I'm Chewy, and I am joined by the wonderful Wolfeltech. And as a lot of you know, a lot of cons are being canceled this year or postponed due to issues and the inability to do large crowd gatherings. Now, a bunch of you are wondering why aren't some cons like MFF or cons farther down the road not being canceled? Today, we're going to be talking about that and explaining a bit from the standpoint of being con workers, how the process works, and how it's going to be going forward. Welcome to this episode of Are Cons Cancelled? So, as this goes on more and more, we're noticing that more and more cons are being canceled. It started out with, FWA moving all the way along to AntherCon deciding that it can't go on. And a lot of you are probably wondering how this works, of why are cons canceling at these specific times and not having like MFF, which still can't answer whether or not a con's being canceled. So, Wolfeltech, you were a director of a con, right?
I'm still a director.
Oh, you're still a director?
It's a local director, but
so what's the logistical stuff behind that most people don't see?
Also keep in mind that we experienced this with It's Rough Out and the Wisconsin First Picnic. First of all, the COVID-19 stuff, it's very unknown right now. Like, for example, you know how I work for a school, right? We have 3 plans in place for in-person, like 100% in-person, full-on education, a mixture of on and offline, and then completely online education right now. And that's just in our district. But there's so many unknowns. This is something that we've not really we haven't experienced in 100 years. So a lot has changed in 100 years, including the internet, like the car, the planes, furries, etc. So there's quite a bit that is unexplored, and that's what's adding to all of this.
So conventions are, in all forms of ways, a relatively new thing. It hasn't been experienced. This wasn't an issue during the Spanish flu, the last time in a pandemic like this was very prevalent. Like, we didn't have to really deal with stuff like this during the H1N1 or any of the others. Like, they were too small for this to become a real big issue, so they couldn't really think about how this works. So what's going on is conventions create contracts. Now, these contracts go into how much you pay, what days you're doing it, and then comes stipulations on how to cancel.
So, contrary to popular belief, you can't just be like, if your convention's next weekend, you can't be like, we can't have it. The contracts I've seen and worked with is usually, there's a thing called attrition. So you actually have to have so many rooms sold, and then you either fulfill the contract or you get a discount on the room reservation space. So typically, a lot of conventions utilize this. But if you cancel with inside, there's like 18 months out, 12 months out, 6 months out periods where if you cancel, let's just say 9 months out, you're actually, you're still being charged for the price up until the 6-month mark, which then at 6 months, it's always 100% you have to pay that money back. Because that's lost room revenue, that's lost, they could have scheduled someone else for the room, etc.
Yeah.
There's a reason why, for example, when we do It's Rough Out and also the picnic, I have an 11th month window that I have to reserve the spaces, because if they don't, for example, if Wisconsin, because we're in Wisconsin, if the Wisconsin parks, like if we cancel our thing, which they're a little bit more reasonable because they're only losing out on maybe like $40. They still take the reservation fee though. You end up actually like owing money. So because of that, there's a lot of things with contracts built in to like where you're required to pay. However, there's always a clause or two that you can write into your contract. And one of those is, and this is the interesting part because it's been varying state to state.
Government said no.
But then there's also what's called an act of God clause. Some states have actually ruled that coronavirus it came out of nowhere, so it's outside the control of either party. So they consider it like an act of God, where it's all right. You can breach the contract due to
Okay, but hear me out now. What if it's Capital City FurCon made it so that they could cancel their con, and it just spread everywhere?
That's a different video. Yeah, that's a completely different video.
Sorry, I had to get that in.
But anyway, yeah. So the thing is we had this happen with It's Rough Out. Is the DNR was like, all right, we're not opening group campsites until June this date. But I didn't know that until literally a week before. So because of that unknowingness, we just canceled it early, and I just ate the cost of the reservation fee.
So even though these conventions are able to technically reopen with the laxing laws of group gatherings, just due to a public safety perspective, they are still able to cancel it if they deem it unsafe to do, which these are large gatherings. And let's be honest, you've had con crud. If you've gone to a con, you've gotten sick because someone with the sniffles decided, oh, I'll be fine. I want to see all the cute fuzzies and hug them, and then they are a living, breathing, like, flea bag.
Here's the other thing to keep in mind. Every state's been different so far.
Wisconsin's a disappointment.
We're gonna get there, because that's yeah. I'm gonna use a Quadra example. Not because a Quadra is canceled. It's not yet. It's in October. Hasn't even been considered for it. But because of where it sits relativity to the Dells. So that's going to be a whole nother thing. But anyway, some states have been forced out of contracts because of the states are saying, well, you can't have people more than this. Now, if there's a limitation and the state is able to implement that a written permission pretty much from the local municipality has pretty much allowed a contract to be breached and postponement of the convention. And the thing is hotels, some of them have been receptive of, hey, let's just postpone this until the future, because they're not losing out on that revenue. They're just waiting a little bit to get it. Because the world runs on money.
You can tell.
Yeah.
So the thing about how some cons will be working is they're too far out. So you're looking at cons like, Aquatifer, MFF, what are a few others that are around there?
We're still not sure about the New Year's Eve for Year's Eve.
Which is a Illinois-based con that lasts a day.
That's Madison.
Oh, that one. Well, there's New Year's con too down in Illinois.
Yeah, but for Year's Eve is better.
But these are all events where it's too far to tell. MFF is one of the biggest furry cons, so even though they haven't said anything yet, they're in hot water just because how this pandemic works.
The other thing that comes in mind, and this comes up with like security issues with conventions, is a very similar concept. Reason why you mostly see furry cons using hotels in their things is you have one entity to work with. MFF is a complicated case where there's a contract with the city of Rosemont, the convention center, the hotels, multiple hotels, a few other things.
God himself dealing with furries.
Yeah.
I had to find a space for that.
Written in contract for Rosemont. Please turn off heat in Skywalk. Thanks, bye.
That is literally
but that,
in the contract.
So that adds complexity. So that's why, like MFF, which keep in mind, you have 11,000 fluff butts all of a sudden converging on one area.
From all over the world.
That takes a lot of planning and things. And that's why Comic-Con and a lot of these other conventions have canceled. Because the logistics in how things are going to be running is completely different.
See, the thing is, it's more likely for a con that has about 1,000 people show up happening than a con that has 10,000 people showing up. Because you can consolidate things a bit better and not have to worry about a huger amount of cross-contamination.
And there's a lot of less risk.
So a place like Aquatifer would be more likely to happen than a place like MFF. MFF would be more likely to happen than, like a big Comic-Con event, like something that would get 10 times the amount of people. Yeah. So it's all about size, it's all about scale, it's all about risk factors based on current infection rates. It's an ongoing process that each con is looking at and like focusing on, trying to figure out whether or not it's safe to do this, and if it's possible to do it with adding safety procedures. Like if there is a furry con this year, you might see them having to check your temperature before you go out on the con floor.
You also are leaving out location.
True.
For example, when the federal government realized they don't have control over this, it became a part of the states to maintain this. Illinois is vastly different than Wisconsin right now, but that was because of...
For once, Illinois was better than us. This one time, they're better than us.
We live in Wisconsin. It's not apparent for me wearing a Badger shirt right now.
Or me being disappointed in this great state.
We don't like our government at the current moment.
It's infighting.
The governor tried. That's the thing. And then the legislature's like, no, you can't. And then the Supreme Court's like, you can't.
So this has led to issues where Wisconsin opened up. Now, this affects cons differently too, based on the government's reactions. So since it opened up, there's nothing saying that a con can't happen now, besides that con's own safety risks.
So, since the state has no power into doing these things, it's led upon the local municipalities, the local counties, the local cities, the local townships to do whatever they require. And this is where I talked about the rant earlier.
Yes. Wolfotech is about to get angry.
Madison, Dane County, they are still following what Governor Evers was doing. They're just starting phase 2.
So if there was a convention held in Madison, it technically still couldn't happen.
It has a limit of 50 people.
But if there was a county such as, the Wisconsin Dells over
I was going to say Columbia County, which is where I live, isn't following those guidelines. So I could have a party right now,
with every furry,
and I can still
ever
see Madison. I can see the lights of Madison pretty much from the county.
So one of the interesting things is one of our biggest tourist hotspots, the Wisconsin Dells, where Aquatifer is being hosted, is no longer following those guidelines, and it's opening up all its hotels and water parks.
So with limitations, though, all the water parks so far, including Mount Olympus, are limited to 50% hotel capacity, but also you have to be staying in the hotel to go to the water parks. So if you want to go to Mount Olympus, you have to stay there.
The Wilderness was already doing that, but that's a topic for another day.
Yeah, I don't even know
that's Chewy getting angry at the Wilderness.
I don't know what Kalahari's doing, but Great Wolf did a brilliant PR thing saying what they were doing. And I actually, growing up with that being built and being there a few times, I completely understand what's going on. But what makes Dells interesting is, Aquatifer is at the Chula Vista, right? Mm-hmm. Chula Vista is actually in Adams County.
Which is a different county from everything else.
Kalahari, I believe, is in Columbia.
It might be. I'd have to double check.
It's either Columbia or Sauk.
The Dells is on a weird line just due to the Wisconsin River.
It's in 4 counties. If you get served by the Kilbourne Fire Department, it's 4 different counties. There's a, like, because I've done things like emergency communication wise, there is Columbia County's emergency call center and then the Dell's emergency call center. They have to put everything into one because it's just so convoluted. But anyway, so what's interesting is if the Dell's issues, let's just say hey, you're limited to this many people for a convention. The other side of the parking lot of Chula Vista is technically in the county of Adams, which isn't following that. But then, because like this part of the parking lot is the city of Dells, and then over here is the county of Adams. The line is right through it.
So this means that...
You could have two different things for the same property.
Which means a quantifer could happen on half of the Chula Vista, but the other side it wouldn't be allowed to.
Yeah. So that's why it's interesting with this whole municipality thing, because, like, Columbia County could do its own thing. So if you're in this one section of the Dells, that happens. If you're in Sauk County, which I will also say that the Columbia and Sauk County fairs have already been canceled, but Lafayette County is not. Yeah. Dodge County surprisingly canceled. I was actually surprised by that.
But enough of counties that no one really knows
I'm
about.
just saying that, like,
I know that you're projecting angrily.
These are literally counties that are just like within 30 minutes of each other.
Yeah, but that gives you kind of an idea of the state of how this works and how cons are dealing with things. Is it's such a weird, convoluted thing that's going on that it's really good to address it and try to explain to the best of our knowledge how this works.
Wisconsin has the ability of having 465 plus 75 different things that goes on, because that's how many municipalities are in the state.
So, I think now is a good time to end it off on with Whiffletech starting to cry. But we hope this helps you understand how conventions are working and what's going on in the background while you don't hear from all of these conventions that are still upcoming and have not been able to decide whether or not they're canceling or continuing yet.
So what I'm going to finish off saying is don't a lot of the conventions are working on this in the background. So just be aware that you may not hear for something for a bit, but doesn't mean that it's not on their mind.
They're talking about it.
They're talking about it.
Our Discords for these conventions are lighting up.
So anyway, just be aware, stay on social media, and
if you go to a convention, and there are conventions as well, be safe. This is a rough time for it, and I did do a video on how well a suit would protect you from it, and it's not much, so if you're going to fursuit, wear a mask under it too.
So anyway, because your camera flashes battery, let's finish off, but just stay calm. We'll get through this. You can still do things in local friends. Just make sure that if you're sick, stay freaking home.
Yes. But thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye.